The war on dietary fat was one of the most consequential nutritional errors of the 20th century. Beginning in the 1960s and 1970s, public health authorities in the United States and across much of the Western world drove a message that fat, particularly saturated fat, was the primary driver of cardiovascular disease and should be minimized in the diet. The food industry obliged by flooding supermarkets with low-fat and fat-free products loaded with sugar, refined carbohydrates, and industrial seed oils. The result was not improved cardiovascular health. It was an obesity and metabolic disease epidemic. The Greenlandic Inuit were not consulted. They had been deriving 37 to 49% of their total calories from fat for centuries, primarily from marine mammals, seals, walruses, whales, whose fat profiles are dominated by monounsaturated fatty acids and long-chain omega-3s. The lipid profile of the traditional Inuit was not what the anti-fat movement predicted. Cholesterol levels were not catastrophically elevated. Cardiovascular disease mortality was, historically, lower than in Western populations eating far less fat. The type of fat was doing the work that total fat quantity couldn't explain. Understanding fat metabolism requires dismantling the monolithic concept of dietary fat as a single thing. Saturated fat from grass-fed ruminants behaves differently in the body than saturated fat from processed meats or palm oil. Monounsaturated fat from olive oil and marine mammals is consistently associated with favorable metabolic outcomes. The omega-3 polyunsaturated fats in cold water fish are anti-inflammatory. The partially hydrogenated trans fats that proliferated in processed food from the 1950s through the early 2000s are genuinely harmful and were rightly eventually banned. Treating all fat as interchangeable was the fundamental error. A critical point the Greenlandic model illustrates is the role of fat in sustaining physical performance in cold environments. The caloric density of fat, 9 calories per gram versus 4 for protein and carbohydrate, makes it the most efficient fuel for sustained energy output. Hunters moving across Arctic ice for hours in extreme cold needed concentrated, available energy. Fat provided it. The body's capacity to oxidize fat for fuel, fat adaptation, is more developed in populations and individuals who regularly rely on it. Modern research on fat adaptation, including in endurance athletes, suggests it can enhance metabolic efficiency and reduce reliance on carbohydrate during prolonged activity. One important clarification: the traditional Inuit diet was not ketogenic in the strict modern sense. Despite very high fat intake, the moderate to high protein content of the diet and glycogen available from fresh meat maintained enough circulating glucose to prevent deep nutritional ketosis in most circumstances. This distinction matters for people attempting to apply Greenlandic dietary principles to a ketogenic framework. The two are similar in orientation but not identical in mechanism. The practical takeaway is not to maximize fat intake regardless of source, but to rehabilitate fat from its undeserved stigma. Whole food fat sources, fatty fish, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, pastured animal fats, nuts, and seeds, deserve a central role in a well-constructed diet. The Arctic demonstrates what a high-fat, whole-food dietary pattern can sustain. The evidence has, gradually and somewhat reluctantly, caught up to that demonstration.